in front of the pub. Lucy ran through the door, ran up to me and kissed me like she had never kissed me before. I gently pushed her away, smiled, and looked at her. "Did you get the job?" "Yes, I start on Monday." Our youngest son, Jake, recently started school full-time, joining his sister Katie. Lucy has long wanted to return to work. I worked as deputy chief designer and tester at a local electronics development company. We designed and built microprocessor boards that controlled everything from food packaging machines to systems that controlled the depth of the furrows farmers plowed for planting. I recently received an award for completing a project for a client. At the heart of the device were Wi-Fi cameras and voltage sensors that measured the depth of the furrow and adjusted the height of the plow so that the seeds were always down at the same depth. There was also a Wi-Fi microphone that helped the software determine the soil type. It was beyond my understanding, but I knew it worked. I worked from home most of the time, but traveled to the office once or twice a week to exchange ideas with colleagues. Lucy's extra income would be useful for some nice little things. Lucy got a job as a real estate agent, something she did before having children. But this agency was different from the usual high street agencies. Their office was located a little out of the center, and there was nothing in the window under £1 million. Most of the objects cost more than $5 million, and some were even marked price on request. If you had to ask, then you couldn't afford it. The agency was called Elegant Properties, and this name spoke for itself. Being a man, I couldn't help but notice that the entire staff was female. They looked professional, elegant, but with a slight hint of sexuality. There was also a room for the children to play or do homework after school until the staff finished work. That night our lovemaking was, shall we say, quite energetic. Lucy rarely took the initiative in sex, but after the children went to bed, she came downstairs in a scarlet silk nightgown. She didn't stay there for long. Lucy is 5 feet 7 in, 36, 24, 36. Long blonde wavy hair and the most beautiful face I've ever seen. This beauty was passed on to our children. The hair and looks are from her, but the good manners and athletic ability are from me. I adored them all. I met Lucy when my parents were looking for an agent to sell their house after my sister and I moved out. Then I thought she was amazing, and she still seems like that to me. She gave me 2 wonderful children and 9 wonderful years of marriage. When Lucy was getting dressed for her first day at work, she asked how she looked. "Very professional," I replied. She really wanted to start a new job. On Thursday, I watched her get ready again and noticed a change. Her outfit resembled party wear. "Darling, this blouse, isn't it too tight for work? Your, breasts, well, let's just say they stand out a lot. I need to look smart." We continued our discussion. Lucy explained that it was important for her to fit in with her colleagues. This seemed reasonable to me, but disturbing thoughts did not leave me. Lucy came home on Friday in high spirits. She said she would bring food and I shouldn't cook dinner. She brought pizza for the kids and Chinese food for us. Children always get terribly dirty with Chinese food. When the children went to bed, she hugged me on the sofa and said, "Honey, can you help me with my shopping tomorrow?" Gerald liked the outfits I'd worn the last 2 days, but I told him I didn't have any of those anymore. Then he gave me a budget to buy something similar, and Gerald suggested that you come with me so that I don't choose something too risky. You may have to ask your mom to look after the kids. Gerald said that lunch and a couple of drinks could be included in the budget. I felt included, and it was nice. Okay, I can help my beautiful wife choose work clothes, especially if it's at Gerald's expense. Great, she smiled. Since we have a busy day tomorrow, maybe we should go to bed early. What do you think? I smiled back. The new job made her happy, and this joy filled the whole house. Well, since there's nothing good on TV anyway, going to bed early sounds like a good idea. We went to bed early, but fell asleep as usual. The next day, we went shopping knowing what we needed. I approved most of her purchases. The only objections I had were a couple of blouses whose buttons didn't go up high enough and one skirt with a slit at the thigh. It was small, but it left a hint that I didn't like. She didn't argue and just put them aside. We had a great lunch at one of the local hotels. She chose a pair of shoes with heels higher than I thought were comfortable for driving, but insisted on bringing a change of shoes, just like she did for parties. There were also several pairs of simple tights. Overall, it was a good day, although stressful. On Monday evening, she said that Gerald and her colleagues approved of her outfit, and if the others were the same, everything would be fine. She had several folders in her hands. She said she was helping one of the girls, Jessica, with the sale of 5 properties worth just over £22 million. She wanted to study the history, location, and possible problems of these objects. This seemed like a reasonable approach to me. I left her to do her chores, cooked dinner myself, and played with the children in the garden. After I put them to bed, I brought Lucy coffee and helped her with the materials. Together, we have compiled a list of interesting facts about the property and its surroundings. Around 10:30, I gave her an impromptu exam. It turned out to be more fun than watching TV. On Tuesday, Lucy took care of the kids and cooked dinner while I worked. On Wednesday, we repeated Monday. This was fine with me. I enjoyed her enthusiasm. On Friday, Lucy asked me to help with a trip to several properties she was selling to get a better understanding of the area. We could have a picnic and make it a family day. It seemed reasonable, and I liked the idea of including the whole family in her work. We had a great day on Sunday. I drove, Lucy took notes, and the kids played Guess What I See. As we stopped at a large empty house and had a picnic on the lawn, the kids noticed something we hadn't seen. It was a tree house, and not homemade, but professionally made. We explored, and Lucy took lots of photos, including one with Jake sitting on my shoulders, Katie holding my leg, and Lucy hugging me. The day was wonderful, but the evening, when the children were already asleep, turned out to be even better. Our life gradually adapted to her new work. We settled into a comfortable routine. A few weeks later, Lucy announced that she would have her first solo show on Wednesday. It was the same house as the tree house. She had previously assisted Jessica, but suddenly she was unable to participate. Lucy was delighted. I watched her get dressed on Wednesday and noticed that she chose stockings and a girdle. Hey, what's wrong with the stockings today? The girls and Gerald say that sometimes a glimpse of the hem of stockings can distract a client at the right moment. I decided to try it. Why not? I didn't like it, so I changed my tone. This is too much. You already wear too tight blouses and short skirts, but now you're also going to show off your stockings. This sends the wrong signal to the client. I think it's better to wear tights. She looked at me, clearly considering my words. Honey, I understand your concerns, but believe me, nothing like that will happen. I don't want to hear that you sell real estate by taking advantage of your clients. If you do this, I will divorce and take the children. With these words, I left. I knew that her screening was scheduled for 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was worried about her, but I did not bother her. At about 4 o'clock, I received a message from her that she might be late and asked me to pick up the children from the office. This added to my anxiety. I asked why she was late, and she replied that she had some paperwork to complete. I arrived at the office. This was my first visit there. Everyone immediately understood who I was and treated me very kindly. Lucy was there. She came up to me, thanked me for my help, and explained that the client had made an offer that would most likely be accepted. Now she needed to finish her paperwork. She introduced me to her colleagues, 3 other agents and 2 employees of the administrative department. They all looked elegant and professional. Lucy said she wouldn't stay more than an hour. I took the kids home, got busy with dinner and getting them to bed, and Lucy returned a little later than she promised, almost an hour and a half later. But the expression of happiness on her face was eloquent. I made my first deal, she announced. I just received a message that the client accepted the offer. I hugged her tightly and held her for a long time. A thought crossed my mind. How much commission would she get from this £6 million? On Saturday, we went to celebrate her success. My parents got to be on duty with the children. When we left the house, I noticed that Lucy was wearing pantyhose, not stockings. It stuck in my head. Over the past week, stockings have become a regular part of her work wardrobe. We had a great evening, and a night without the kids at home was even better. On Thursday, when Lucy was getting dressed, I noticed that her underwear was new and looked much sexier than usual. After the incident with the stockings, I decided to discuss this. "Darling, this is very beautiful underwear, but is it suitable for work?" "Well, I thought that if I wear stockings, I should wear matching underwear. It looks neater." "Honey, this worries me. Who even sees your underwear at work? All this is starting to worry me." She looked at me with that expression that I immediately recognized. This meant that an argument was about to begin. "Don't you trust me?" "I trust you. But look at it from my perspective. You go to work in low-cut blouses, short skirts, sexy lingerie, and stockings. You didn't dress this sexy even on our date on Saturday. Have I become second to you after work? Don't talk nonsense. Of course not." "I don't think you trust me," she said sharply and left the room. I really didn't like it. We usually resolved conflicts quickly, but her behavior made me angry. That evening, I decided that we should talk. But Lucy unexpectedly sent a message that there was no need to cook dinner as we were going to the pub. She added that she had already found a nanny for the children. When Lucy returned home with the children, her colleague Jessica came with them. Jessica smiled at me and said, "I'm your nanny today, but please don't stay too long." They brought pizza to the children, which they were delighted with. I didn't like the pizza that much, but I didn't say anything. Something was clearly up. Lucy took my hand. "Let's go, dear. Just to the pub. I'm driving." I tried to ask a question, but she said softly, "TSS, I'll explain everything later." When we got to the pub, Lucy found a table in the corner, and we ordered dinner. If you want, I can continue the translation from now on. Reaching across the table, she took my hand and, looking at me, said quietly, "Honey, I'm sorry about this morning's incident. I told the girls about our little fight." The hair on the back of my neck immediately stood up. I pulled my hand away and said angrily, "So now you're discussing our family life with your colleagues. What will happen next, our sex life? And I'm sure they supported you by telling you what an inconsiderate husband I am and that it was entirely my fault. How much did you tell them?" She looked at the table for a moment. I don't think she realized how angry I was with her. "I just told them that you were upset because I dress better for work than when I go out with you." No, they didn't support it. Jessica gave me a good scolding. She said I shouldn't let my colleagues dictate how I behave at home. I didn't even realize I was doing this. She said that work and home may not be completely different worlds, but family must be a priority, otherwise both parties will suffer. She said I need to apologize to you, and that's when she offered to babysit. "I'm sorry, dear." Even Gerald scolded me. He said the support of his employees' families is very important to him and his business. A happy family at home is a happy family at work. We finished dinner. We talked about everything, including her morning behavior. She didn't realize she was acting this way. She admitted her mistake, and her colleagues pointed it out. I was starting to like these new people she was working with. They seemed to be pretty reasonable for now. She said she would continue to wear stockings because she liked them, but she would save the sexy lingerie for our outings. She apologized for her behavior and admitted that she was upset because I made a remark to her about her underwear. I accepted her apology, and we walked out to the car, holding hands. The children were still awake when we returned home. "We're not late." Jessica asked if everything was okay with us. When Lucy started to answer, Jessica simply said quietly, "What does David think?" It was nice. I told her I was pleased, and with her help, we solved several problems that Lucy had not previously realized. We put the kids to bed and sat in front of the TV. Although it was a school night, I allowed myself another bottle of beer and Lucy a glass of wine. I asked about Jessica. How was she able to offer her help as a nanny so quickly? I noticed that she didn't have a wedding ring. Lucy revealed that Jessica is divorced. She has 2 children, her parents live around the corner, and are always happy to babysit their grandchildren. She didn't know anything about her ex-husband. This is not a topic that comes up in conversations. She felt that there was something between Jessica and Gerald, but she couldn't say exactly what it was. The next day, when Lucy was getting dressed, I noticed that she was back to her usual underwear and stockings, but the rest of her clothes were the same as always. She looked like most of the other girls in the office. I thought about the series The Stepford Wives, but despite their outward resemblance, they were definitely not submissive. I dismissed the thought. I later noticed that she would wear sexy lingerie if she was going to show properties. When I asked her about it, she said it gave her confidence and again accused me of not trusting me. She started to get angry, but then apparently remembered Jessica's warning and apologized. I noticed that she wore the same clothes on show days. When I asked about this, she explained that Gerald asked them to do this for the sake of consistency and to make customers feel more comfortable. Routine returned to normal. When they had a new property, I would help Lucy find out more about it, and if it was nearby, we would take the kids and have a little adventure. We definitely took advantage of our daughter Katie's powers of observation. Lucy had been working there for about 3 months when she told me that Gerald was having a meeting at his house that weekend. He was going to announce bonuses. Lucy mentioned that they have a commission split scheme. I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, but she explained again. Half of the sales team's commissions go into a general fund, which is divided every 3 months among all of Gerald's employees. Some employees are essential to the business, but do not have the opportunity to earn commissions. For example, cleaners find it annoying if the office looks dirty when clients arrive. Cleaners are also involved in maintaining the interior, painting walls, caring for plants, so that the office always looks presentable. The administrative staff, without whom no company could function, took care of day-to-day affairs. In addition, Gerald owned a small moving company that specialized in moving luxury furniture. Although the moving company's employees were invited, they rarely came, but for the rest of us, it was almost a mandatory event. It seemed to Lucy that it was always a good day. Everyone came, husbands, children, girls, boys. There was even a nanny for the children, as well as a taxi to take everyone home. We arrived on Saturday at 2:30, a little late. Jake decided he didn't like the taste of worms. He saw birds eating them and wanted to know why. Now he knows. As soon as we arrived, the children ran away because all the friends they had met in kindergarten were there, and there was also a large inflatable pool. People gathered in 3 groups. I recognized the sales and office staff and assumed that the other group consisted of cleaners. As I looked around, I realized it might seem sexist, but all the women were very attractive. The women from the sales department and, I assume, their husbands were sitting at a large table. We joined them, and I was introduced to the men, but I already knew the women. The man, who I assumed was Gerald, walked out of the house, followed by Jessica. She looked a little flushed. One of the women at the table said, "And here they are." Apparently, we weren't the only ones who were late, but since it was his party, it didn't matter. This was the first time I saw Gerald. He didn't look particularly imposing and was probably a little older than me and a few inches shorter. I wasn't tall, but he was even shorter. He had the air of a self-confident, almost arrogant man. His face said, "You are all here because I want you to," or "You will do what I say." And I thought it wasn't just directed at his employees. I felt like I had small man syndrome. He was a little wider at the shoulders than me. It seemed to me that he was watching his physical form. He was dressed impressively. His shirt and trousers fit a little too tightly, as if on purpose to emphasize his figure. He walked up to the table, starting at the far end, and began greeting everyone. You know that feeling when you don't like a person right away. Although he had done nothing wrong, I immediately felt antipathy towards him. He seemed like a slippery, unpleasant guy to me. This is probably part of the realtor profession. However, I needed to suppress this feeling. There were times when I was wrong in my first impressions, and then these people became my friends. Plus, he was Lucy's boss at a job she liked, and it paid well. Gerald extended his hand to me. I stood up and shook it. and then he began to slowly squeeze her, using force. This was a tactic to demonstrate dominance that I had already seen in my work. I noticed that the noise level around me had decreased and people began to glance at us. I leaned towards him and said loud enough for him to hear, "Well, what kind of child are you?" An expression of shock quickly crossed his face and his smile faltered. He released my hand and said that I could help myself to drinks and that I would certainly find something to my liking. He then kissed Lucy on the cheek and left. Jessica followed him, but turned to me and smiled slightly. What no one probably noticed was that when I leaned over to talk to him, I put my foot on his toes and started applying pressure. Strangely, I saw some of the men grinning. He seemed to be doing this to them too, but they couldn't figure out how to respond. Lucy said, "Let's get something to drink. I think it won't hurt me." As we made our way to the table that was set up like a bar, Lucy asked quietly, "What was that all about?" I ignored her question for the moment. As we approached the bar, I noticed half a dozen bottles of beer noms broadside my beloved. It has a special taste. I quickly looked around and noticed that no one else was drinking it. Broadside, wow, I might like these kinds of parties. But then I thought, did Gerald find out what kind of beer I like? Nobody else seems to drink it, and the drink is quite specific. No, but Gerald is interested in what the employees' partners prefer, so that they can treat them to something that they will probably like, Lucy replied. But I didn't tell him anything about Broadside. So your boss is now collecting a dossier on us. He probably also stuffed the office with listening devices, I joked. Just jotting down some notes. It's part of his family policy to get to know people. But what was it now? Lucy asked again. He just acted like an idiot. I saw him do that in the office. Sorry, I should have warned you. I didn't think he would behave like this here. I don't care. A man who invites someone to a party and tries to show dominance by squeezing his hand is an idiot. All it proves is that he has stronger hands than I do, and nothing more. So I told him it was childhood. I didn't share with her that I didn't like him and that I didn't trust him. Lucy didn't bring up the topic any further. We returned to the table where her colleagues were sitting. I started talking to the husbands. They seemed normal, but a little depressed. The women sat at one end of the table, and we men sat at the other. Brian, Carol's husband, tapped me on the shoulder as he left to get our drinks and simply said, "Great move." He returned with a bottle of Broadside for me and one for himself. It seems like we could get along. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when Gerald came to our table. He extended his hand to Karen and said, "Can you help me pick up the meat for the barbecue?" She stood up without even looking at her husband John, took Gerald's hand and walked into the house. We all heard John curse quietly. Crap. He walked over to the bar and then returned with a tall glass filled with some clear liquid. Brian looked at him with sympathy. I just didn't understand what the hell just happened. I noticed that Jessica had started putting out salads and rolls. She even lit the gas grill. It heats up quickly, so I was surprised when Karen returned half an hour later with Gerald. Gerald walked up to Jessica, who was at the grill, and said, "Thank you." Then he kissed her on the cheek. She didn't react at all. Lucy was absolutely right. There was something between them. The way she followed him and the way he egged her on looked strange. I leaned over to Brian and asked quietly, "What's happening?" He stood up and said, "Come with me for a beer." He didn't need help, but at the bar he said, "Would you like to go out for drinks with me on Wednesday night?" He looked at me and there was no smile on his face. It seemed to me that I could learn something important, so I agreed. He named a pub that I didn't usually visit. We returned to the table with drinks. John was already pretty drunk and looked upset. Karen tried to approach him, but he moved away. I looked at Lucy. She didn't seem to notice. The rest of the day went normally, except that John continued to avoid Karen. When the bonuses were announced, everyone except John and Karen looked pleased. Karen looked close to tears. She went to play with the children and Jessica came up to her and hugged her. I began to notice tension among the sales team and their partners. As we took the taxi home, I cautiously asked Lucy about what she saw between John, Karen, Gerald, and Jessica. She agreed that there was something between Gerald and Jessica. Lucy noticed a change in Karen's behavior, but could not explain what was wrong. She promised to find out something at work on Monday. The evening at home passed quietly. When the kids went to bed, my cell phone suddenly vibrated. It was strange. I looked at the screen, and there was a message. I hope you and I started off on the wrong foot. Maybe we can meet for a drink later. Gerald. How did he get my number? I added him to my contacts. I told Lucy about this, and she explained that the company was recording my number as an emergency contact. Well, that's logical. I thought, why does he need my number in his personal phone? When I asked Lucy if she knew that Gerald personally had my number, she said no. He probably took it from my file. What else is in this file? I asked a rhetorical question. He has my number. He knows what beer I prefer. What else does he know about me? Lucy replied that perhaps Gerald had a small file on his employees' families. He conducts it personally, and no one else has access to it. I didn't like it. In my work, we are extremely careful that no one steals our ideas, so the idea of personal files was suspect. I did not intend to accept Gerald's invitation to a meeting hastily, but I had a feeling that meeting with Brian on Wednesday would be very informative. I wasn't used to hiding things from Lucy, but I felt that before I told her everything, I needed to see what Brian had to say. I wasn't going to lie to her, but I wasn't going to reveal the whole truth just yet. I just said I was going to have a drink without mentioning who. When I arrived at the pub, Brian and Frank, Zoe's husband, were already there. I took drinks for everyone. Will John join? I asked. They just shook their heads. As I sat down, Brian spoke. Do you want to ask questions, or is it better to tell us right away what happened? I think it's better that I ask the questions and you tell me if your story answers them, I suggested. Fine. What do you want to know? First, about Jessica and Gerald. But to be honest, I'm more interested in why he tried to crush my hand. And what is this story with Karen, John, and Gerald? Something was wrong, and John quickly got drunk and then stayed away from her all day. I'd like to understand what's going on. I think our story will answer your questions. But I'll warn you right away, it doesn't paint Frank and me in the best light. Maybe you'll understand why, because we think you love your family. I love it. But there are things that I will not tolerate, I answered firmly. Then listen. Perhaps you will change your mind when you find out everything. Frank stood up and looked at Brian and said, You start, and I'll bring you another beer and pick you up when you're done. It was clear that the two shared some experience. Okay, I'll tell you my story. Frank's is almost the same. I won't beat around the bush. Gerald loves to humiliate men, to do as much as he can get away with. You probably noticed that on Saturday, Brian said with a slight grin. It's a pity that Frank and I, he nodded towards Frank, didn't think of what you did. We just pulled our hands away. It was a way to put us in our place. The problem is that it's a game for him. Only we didn't know we were in it until it was too late, and he had the upper hand. What about Karen and John? I clarified. I'll get back to them later. It gets worse. When Carol first started working, the same thing was probably happening to her as is happening to Lucy now. Smart, almost sexy clothes that the company pays for. I nodded. Stockings for work, but for you tights and something baggy? Don't worry, you're not the only one. The reason they chose baggy clothes for you is because they feel guilty. Gerald told Carol, I hope you're not wearing those clothes I bought you for Brian. She felt guilty. I don't understand how it works, but it continued until she and I had a fight. Looking back, we think. He looked at Frank, who had just returned with a beer. It was Gerald's plan. To what point have you reached? Frank asked. Stockings. This is the first step. Do you want me to continue? Frank suggested. No, I can handle it, buddy. Brian looked at me again and continued. When he used that phrase, Carol dressed modestly for me until we had a fight. It was a wedge. After a couple of days, Gerald stepped in and smoothed things over. talking to Carol after it was all over, and I wasn't even close to the end, yet she realized that Gerald had been adding fuel to the fire before coming to the rescue. It seemed strange to her at the time, but we were happy to be together again. I chimed in, "We had something similar when we celebrated Lucy's first sale." "It fits into the scheme. How long did it last?" "No, Jessica intervened on the first day and scolded Lucy. She even babysat the kids so we could talk. Jess is a good girl. I bet Gerald hit her for it." "Are they a couple?" "It feels like they're together and then they're not," I asked. "It's a little more complicated, but it will become clearer soon." He took a deep breath, and then Frank tried to take the floor again. "Maybe I'll continue after all. I had more time to get used to it." Brian barely smiled. "Thanks, friend, but I need to do this. I think this will help." Returning to me, he took another deep breath and said, "Carol had been working for about 4 months when she said she was going to a course with Gerald, some training in real estate sales." He took a long sip of his beer. There was a tear in his eye as he continued, "That morning when she left for the course, she told me that she would spend 2 nights with Gerald, but how she loved me, she was doing it for us, for our future, and it would be only once. I begged her, saying that if she did this, I would file for divorce. Let's just say she gave me examples of what would happen to me if I stopped her or divorced her. She said she loved me and it would only be sex, and that she must do this for our protection. It didn't make sense. She told me about Jessica and her husband Harry. He was a carpenter. He refused, and they eventually divorced. Gerald hired a lawyer who literally tore Harry apart in court. There was a fire in his workshop. The fire extinguishing system saved the building, but he lost a lot of wood. The equipment was damaged by water, and some machines were simply broken. The electronics couldn't handle it. He was then beaten, and his wallet, phone, and work van were stolen. The van was found burnt out. He couldn't work for very long. He made custom furniture. He had to sell the business, and Jessica got half the proceeds. There's no evidence that Gerald's people from his moving company did this, but I've met them, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case." Brian looked at Frank, but Frank raised his hand and Brian continued. He was already crying. And then Jessica came in. I didn't even notice how she appeared. Jessica sat me down and told me that if I divorced Carol, I would only see my kids once every 4 weeks, lose my house, possibly my job, and most likely our entire savings. She promised that it would only be one time. She begged me to let it happen and not to divorce Carol. Jessica was crying. She led Carol out the door. The difference between them was amazing. Carol stood tall, determined, ready to do things on her own terms, while Jessica sobbed. As Jessica passed me, she gave me a business card and said, "I'll come see you tonight." They took the kids to school, and I was left alone, just crying and wondering what the hell was going on. Finally, I looked at the business card Jessica gave me. It was a business card for a marriage counselor. There was another business card. It was a lawyer, and it said, "Look back." I turned it over, and on the back it said, "Don't contact him. He was no use to Harry." Tears streamed down his face. Frank went to get some beer, and when he returned, Brian continued. He smiled sadly through his tears. I pulled myself together. I needed to pick up the kids from school. When I got there, Jessica was already there. There was an agreement that anyone from the office could pick up the children from school. Jessica followed me home. I didn't even think about it. Let's just say she kept me busy. No, not in that sense. When the children went to bed, she told me what happened to her and Harry, how she loved him and missed him. She admitted that she was stupid, made a mistake, and did everything wrong. Everything that happened to Harry, his injuries, the loss of his business, he blamed her. If she hadn't put him in this situation, he wouldn't have had to refuse. After that, she got me drunk to the point where I could no longer think. She stayed overnight and took the children to school in the morning. I couldn't go to work in this state. I didn't even call there. I later found out that Jessica called herself. As it turned out, she got my work number from Gerald. It was in my folder. Yes, Gerald has folders for each of us. Jess told me that she and Harry had been seeing a counselor, and she was shocked that Harry had to stay at home and take care of the children, knowing that his wife was sleeping with another man. No man should have to go through this, and that's why she was with me that night. Frank, and I think this is part of Gerald's plan to humiliate us. Brian took another long sip of his beer. It was almost gone. Frank went back for more, and Brian continued. Carol returned home in the evening the next day. Long story short, after the first night she realized what she had done and came home asking for forgiveness. But I told her that I would still divorce her. The next day, Gerald and his team from the moving company came to my house. It was a gentle reminder of what would happen if I filed for divorce. He also warned me that she could not leave the company. If she does, he has a video of their evening together. Everything was quick. He didn't even enter the house. He didn't smirk, didn't smile, just warned and left. When I spoke to Carol, she was surprised by the mention of the video. But from her face, one could understand that these were not the only videos that existed. We started going to counseling, and it seemed like we were doing well. I still have angry outbursts sometimes, but Carol knows how to deal with it. That's all, my friend. That's the story. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Then he wiped his tears with a handkerchief and blew his nose. I always suspected something was going on, but damn. Sorry, I have to ask. Carol is now. Well, I'm almost sure not. I kept an eye on her. When I can afford it, I hire a private investigator to watch them. One of them even pretended to be interested in buying the property and arranged for Gerald and Carol to show him the house, but did not notice anything suspicious. So, like I said, I'm pretty sure she's not continuing, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I still have doubts. I went to the bar to think. When I returned, I said to both of them, I have a couple of questions. Both nodded. What does Gerald get out of this? And what about John, Karen, and Gerald? What's happening? Frank took the floor. That's the point. Gerald takes pleasure in humiliating their husbands. He insists that wives tell their husbands before they leave with him. He's not interested in sleeping with his wives if their husbands don't know about it. For him, everything is simple. Every time he looks at us and smiles, he seems to be saying, I slept with your wife while you stayed at home with the children, cuckold. He takes pleasure in demonstrating it. But with John, it's a little different. He sees him as a weak person. We don't think Karen is too happy about it, but she's trying to save their marriage. We know they're seeing a counselor, but poor John is caught between a rock and a hard place. He knows what happened to Harry. Frank looked at Brian, then back at me. We think that John will not be able to stand it at some point, will lose his temper and do something stupid. As a result, he will either end up in the hospital or in prison. We feel sorry for him, as does Karen. We would like to help them, but we don't know how. That's how things are. We thought it best to warn you, and then decide for yourself what to do. By the way, my story is almost the same as Brian's. I also broke my arm. What does he have for women? I asked. We don't know, Frank answered. All we know is that all the women say this is what they should do. We have a lot of theories and assumptions, but no evidence. I asked the question that was on the tip of my tongue. Why didn't you do anything against him yourself? And I think you understand what I mean. We understand, Frank replied. We often come here to come up with something. Look, I have a small construction company, me and 3 other guys. Brian has a small business installing and repairing heating and plumbing systems. He and 2 employees, so everything has to be perfect. We can't go to jail. So an alibi is a problem unless you involve other people. And there are also difficulties with the opportunity. He is rarely alone. These security guards from his moving company follow him everywhere. Brian added, and to make things even worse, we receive orders from Gerald that are quite profitable. It's as if he's saying, you won't survive in business without me. Nonsense, Frank said. Everything was fine with us before he appeared, and it will be the same when he disappears. I noticed that Frank said when and not if. I had a feeling that they were working to make this happen sooner rather than later, and that I could help them. Frank continued. We discussed the possibility of asking Jessica to help us, but we don't want to put her in a difficult position after she supported Brian. I think she's on our side. You didn't have a full program with lingerie and stockings like we did, judging by what you said," Frank added. "I think Jessica prevented it. We even thought about hiring a hitman, but several problems arose. We couldn't afford it, and we didn't know how to find him. And also these damn files that he keeps on us. We don't know what's in them. And of course, a video with our wives. That's why we come here. The pub may be crappy, but the beer is good." To be honest, I hardly noticed the beer. The story sounded plausible, but these were two guys I had met for the first time just a week ago. Apparently, this thought was reflected on my face. Brian turned to me and said, "Listen, buddy, all we wanted to do was warn you so that when it all starts, you'll be ready. It's up to you to decide what to do." He smiled slightly. "Unless, of course, you're a hitman or an ex-SAS commando or a Royal Marines sniper. But I suppose if that was the case, Gerald would have known about it and would not have taken Lucy." I smiled faintly. "Sorry, friend, but I'm none of them. I never even held a weapon in my hands. But if everything goes as you said, you will have an ally. The more people create an alibi, the stronger it is. 3 is better than 2. With 3 of us, it's easier to create an alibi, and with more of us, we might be able to come up with a plan." I paused. "Why does Jessica stay, you know?" Frank stared into his beer and said quietly, "We thought about this a lot. We have several theories, but none of them seem convincing. The private investigator Brian hired found out that the money Jessica received from the sale of the business was returned to Harry, and it appears that she is paying him some amount each month. We think that's where her bonuses go. We're guessing, just guessing. Mind you that Jessica bought the business because Harry is back working in his old shop. We think that she remains close to Gerald to cause as much harm as possible to him from within the company, and we are sure that Gerald has some kind of dirt on her. Perhaps a video or something similar. This way she can help people like she helped Brian and you last week. But we don't know for sure. This is all speculation. Maybe she even loves him sometimes," Brian added. "Sometimes you can read it in her face." I didn't tell them, but I knew a former Marine. This is Lucy's father. His name was Jock. Although he was not a Scot, he just got the nickname in the Corps, and it stuck. Jock and Lucy's mother, Maureen, were good people. I liked them, and if it went as Brian and Frank predicted, it would definitely upset them. It's better not to tell them anything for now. We agreed to meet in a couple of weeks, or sooner if something important came up. On the way out of the pub, Frank stopped and said, "Be careful, buddy. He will attack you even more because you didn't bow to him at the party. You humiliated him in front of us. He won't leave it. Oh yeah, and we saw you step on his foot. Handsome. But now revenge will become even sweeter for him." After the pub. Before going to the pub, I thought I had a great marriage. After it, I thought my marriage was in jeopardy. I went home with Frank's warnings fresh in my mind. Despite all the beer I had drunk, I felt surprisingly sober. This gave me time to think about what to do if Lucy said what I had been warned about. Perhaps I can stop this beforehand. Let's see. When I returned, it was not too late. Lucy asked how the evening went. I replied that I was just talking to the guys about various things without going into details. I got myself a beer. Lucy came up to me, put her arm around my neck, and suggested I go to bed early. I said that I probably wouldn't be at my best because of the drinking, but tomorrow would definitely be our evening. She smiled at me, kissed me, and went into the bedroom. I sat and thought for a moment and then followed her, finishing my beer. We were just hugging. I hardly slept. Lucy never refused intimacy with me, but she very rarely initiated it herself. The thought flashed that she was trying to appease me before her trip with Gerald. I realized that this was a dangerous path and tried to push away such thoughts. Perhaps she was just being loving or in a good mood. I needed to keep these suspicions under control. The drive home and sleepless night gave me the opportunity to make a plan in case Frank and Brian's predictions turned out to be true. What bothered me most was the threats. Brian didn't go into detail, and I didn't want to press him. The poor guy has already been through too much. Just in case, I figured out how to prepare. At work, I talked to the storekeeper and borrowed a couple of cameras and microphones, explaining that I wanted to test something. This was nothing new to me, so no one suspected anything. It doesn't take me long to set them up and connect them to my home computer. I returned home at lunchtime and installed cameras in the living room, kitchen, and hallway surrounding the front door. I didn't see the point of putting a camera in the bedroom. It was personal space, and I wasn't looking for evidence of cheating. A camera at the door may have been overkill considering we already had a doorbell with a camera, but Gerald most likely knew about its presence. Part of my plan to intercept the situation early on was to tell Lucy a story about a couple from my work that night after the kids had gone to bed. She cheated on her husband with her boss, and now they are divorced. Everyone suffered, even innocent children. I told Lucy that I would do the same if this happened to us. She just looked at me with a strange look, as if asking why I was telling her this. For the next 2 weeks, nothing happened. I checked the cameras every 2 days and found nothing. I didn't notice any changes. She dressed the same as before. The sex was normal, maybe even a little more passionate, which I attributed to her being in a good mood. On a Monday afternoon, a couple of weeks after my conversation with Brian and Frank, Lucy burst into the house in high spirits. She had good news, but asked to wait until the children went to bed. When the kids went to bed, she brought me a beer. I try not to drink strong drinks on a workday, but today I might need it. It must be serious. I guessed what was going on. Lucy said that Gerald was running a course on the psychology of real estate sales, and she was going to one of them. This course took place in Nottingham, where he planned to open a new office. She was supposed to help him get ready on Tuesday afternoon, attend the course on Wednesday, help him pack on Thursday, and return home. As a sign of gratitude, Gerald gave her Friday and Saturday off. Lucy was very happy. After Brian and Frank's warnings, I, on the other hand, was not happy. The first stage of my plan didn't work, so I moved on to the second. "And when are you going to tell me you're going to spend 2 nights in Gerald's bed?" I asked. Her chin dropped to her chest, and she began to mumble something. But most importantly, there was no denial. I continued. "As far as I understand, Gerald uses these courses to sleep with his employees. You only have to look at Jessica, Carol, Karen, and Zoe to see that this is true. And I'm warning you, if you sleep with Gerald, I will divorce you. I love you with all my heart, but I don't share. And if you ask permission, I'll say no. If you do this anyway, I'll get a divorce. Think about it before you say anything. I'm going for a walk to give you time to think." I got up, put on my coat, and went out. Just outside the door, I sent a message to Brian and Frank. "It has begun. The game has begun." They responded with sad emoticons. It's funny, I didn't imagine them being people who use emojis, but they responded. I walked for about an hour and a half. When he returned, Lucy was already in bed. I went upstairs, washed my face, and lay down next to her. She hugged me and said, "This is a great opportunity for me. These courses are very expensive. There is always a waiting list, but in business they are highly valued. Please, darling, can I go? I will think. But remember what I said about Gerald," I replied and turned my back to her. There was still no denial. I may have to install a camera in the bedroom. The next day there was a knock on the door. On the doorstep I found an 18-inch water pipe with weighted lead on one end. There was a note on it. "This fits comfortably in your sleeve. We'll cover you when we can. B and F." It's good to learn from other people's mistakes. The pipe really fits comfortably between the elbow and palm. I hid it behind the curtain next to the door. Lucy returned late on Tuesday. I picked up the children from the office. There was an icy atmosphere in the house. After the children had fallen asleep, Lucy said, "Dave, we need to talk. I missed work on Wednesday, so I broke another rule and drank beer. I didn't offer her anything." We went to the living room. I sat down in a chair. She sat on the sofa with a glass of wine. I said, "If you're not going to say you won't sleep with Gerald, there's no point in having this conversation." If you do this, you know what will happen." She straightened up and looked me straight in the eyes. "Gerald said you would behave this way. So, if you divorce me, I'll get the kids and you'll never see them again. You'll pay child support until they graduate, and I'll do my best to make it last as long as possible. I'll get our savings and the house. You will be left with nothing. I will say that you ruined our marriage. Maybe I'll have to scratch myself a little and claim that you beat me. I won't go to the police, but the hospital will most likely report this. After prison with a criminal record, you will not be able to find a job, and I have to do it." With these words, she stood up and left, leaving me to watch her leave. Did my wife really threaten me that I would lose everything that was dear to me? It was no longer my wife. After talking with Brian and Frank, I realized that this was Gerald's work. I don't know where she went, but she returned half an hour later. She sat down opposite me and took a sip of wine. "Sorry, honey, I shouldn't have left, but I thought you needed time to think about the consequences. Darling, I love you with all my heart. This will only be one time. This will benefit us in the long run. It's only 2 nights." She fell silent, looked down, and added, "Sorry, but I have to do it." She clearly didn't come up with this on her own. Some moments were too contrived. "I assume it was Gerald who gave you these ideas?" I asked. "He said you might not agree to be a family again." "But it will only be one time, dear. It won't happen again. I want this. Sorry, but I have to do this." "What? Do you want to destroy our marriage? How can I trust you? You'll do it once, and what's to stop you from using it against me again? Gerald said you could say that." "That's why I signed a marriage contract. Gerald prepared it." She handed me the paper. "It's worth nothing," I said, and threw it away without even looking. I continued, "I know what you should have told me." Gerald insisted that this should not be considered treason. "Nonsense. Gerald wanted you to tell me this to humiliate me. You could have just walked away and done it without saying a word. I would have suspected something, but since I have kids to take care of and work to do, I wouldn't have been able to check." I paused. "Either way, I would trust you to keep your marriage vows." "No, it's just his way of humiliating me. This won't work. If you sleep with him, I'll file for divorce." I went upstairs, grabbed a couple of pillows and a spare blanket from the closet, and then threw them downstairs. "You will no longer sleep in our bed, the one where we made love, where we conceived our children, until you give up this disgusting idea." It was Gerald's revenge for the fact that I humiliated him that Saturday. Apparently, Jessica, Carol, and Zoe informed their husbands about the affair at the last minute, so that they would not have time to argue. Now he gave me almost 2 weeks of torture. This could have been his mistake. On Wednesday, I started working late, at home. Around 9 in the morning, there was a knock on the door. I had some idea who it could be. I took the pipe just in case. And I was right. Gerald stood on the threshold with 2 movers from his company. These were big guys. One of them leaned over and put his hand on the doorbell. The hint was obvious. "I think Lucy told him that I started work late that day. I'll have to talk to her about this." "I won't come in, it'll only take a couple of minutes," he said. I didn't invite him in. "Look, Dave, it's still going to happen. It will only be one time, I promise. I need company while I'm away. This will benefit you and your family." "And if I say no, what then?" I asked. "Have you heard about Harry, Jessica's ex-husband?" he asked. I shook my head. It was a lie Brian and Frank told me about him. "Well, he divorced Jessica after our little meeting. He was asked to change his mind, but his ego wouldn't allow it. He was a carpenter, quite respected, but it seems his workshop burned down. Something about wood, glue, and a heater. He made very beautiful products. He never changed his mind. He was robbed, and his van was stolen. Serious injuries. I heard it took a long time to recover. The robbers were never found." The smiles of the 2 movers clearly showed what they meant. They seemed to want me to agree to the terms. He had to sell the rest of the business, and Jessica received half of the proceeds. Her lawyer emptied Harry's accounts. He lost his house, his savings. He pays child support and only sees his children for a few supervised hours a month. But he loves them as much as you do. If he had changed his mind at any time before the divorce, he would have been accepted back into our work family, and I would have helped him start over. Perhaps I would even give several orders. He really has golden hands. So think about what Lucy said and let it happen. Then everything will be fine. Now I have a nice day at work, while you still have it. The threats were obvious. As soon as he left, I called Brian and Frank. We met in a cafe. I told them my plan. They asked for some time to think it over and promised to let me know. Late that evening, I received a message that they agreed and Brian had already contacted Jessica. The house remained cold even when Lucy returned with the children. When the children went to bed, I said, "Lucy, we need to talk." I was sitting at the dining table and she sat opposite me. I kept my tone calm. "You threatened me by accusing me of something I didn't do. That I would lose my home, my children, everything that was dear to me. How do you expect me to survive this? The person I love most in the world has threatened to take away everything I love. I'm sorry, dear, I didn't mean to. It was just a threat. Gerald made me say it. I would never do that," she tried to justify herself. "But you said this. I don't care who put it in your head, you said those words. How do I know you won't try this again?" she said quietly. "I want to do this. I have to do this. This will do us good. Just trust me." "Why should I trust you if you are ready to destroy our marriage?" I answered sharply. "Gerald just wants to humiliate me. He lives for it. No, he's not like that. He's a good person." "Nonsense. Good men don't sleep with other men's wives to humiliate them. And what will stop him from recording this on video and blackmailing you later?" Confusion flashed across her face, and I continued quietly but firmly. "Look, I don't care what he has on you. We can figure this out together. Don't choose him over me." "Sorry, I can't." She had already made her choice and was waiting for me to answer. We sat in silence. I deliberately did not interrupt her. She was the first to break. "It doesn't have to be like that. It's just one time and I'll make it up to you. It's your birthday in a week. I promise I'll make it up to you. I'll ask Mom and Dad to look after the kids and we'll go somewhere. And nothing, absolutely nothing, will be beyond the bounds." She thought for a second and added, "Well, except for other people." I growled at her. "So you can sleep with other people, but I can't. This is hypocrisy." I rushed to the kitchen, deciding that I needed coffee, although I wanted beer. She ran after me. "Darling, you're right. But I need to think about it, come to terms with the thought of you with another woman." I turned around and looked at her with anger. "How am I supposed to cope with the thought of you being with Gerald? Do you honestly believe I can just stay home, take care of the kids, and pretend everything's fine while my wife is with another man? That's not going to happen. You have a choice. Either you stop this, leave it behind, and we work on fixing our relationship, or—" I threw the coffee in the sink and still grabbed a beer from the refrigerator. "Okay, if you want to do something for me, organize a party for my birthday this Sunday. Invite your family, friends, neighbors, even your office colleagues." I paused and added, "Except Gerald. I will not allow myself to be humiliated in my home." This should have provoked her. "He will almost certainly appear. Okay, it won't be easy, but if my parents help, we can do it." "But why? Your birthday isn't until next week, isn't it?" "2 reasons. If you do what you set out to do, it will show you what you have to lose when I file for divorce. And if you change your mind, then we will go somewhere for my birthday, and I will give you an unforgettable trip. Nothing, absolutely nothing, will be beyond the bounds." "Well, except for other people," I repeated her words. "Okay, I'll throw a party, because you still won't divorce me. You have too much at stake. Gerald will take care of it," she said with an arrogance that I didn't like. "Yes, your lover and his 2 thugs visited me this morning. They threatened me. They didn't say it directly, of course. They just told what happened to Jessica's ex-husband. Did you know about this? And I guess you told him that I'm working from home today?" "No, I didn't see him today." He left for Leeds early this morning with a delivery. But you usually work from home on Wednesdays. Perhaps he knew that. He tracks people, says it's good for business. I don't know what happened to Jessica's husband. She never talks about him, and why should she? Then I think you should ask her and decide if you can live with it. I suddenly remembered what Brian and Frank had said. By the way, where's Jessica? She seems to be nowhere in sight. Gerald sent her to Nottingham on Monday to inspect several sites that he plans to visit when we go there next week. This was the same day when he invited Lucy to go to Nottingham. This bastard took the only person who protected the vulnerable out of the way and took advantage of it. He took pleasure in manipulating people. The house remained cold despite the presence of children. I allowed Lucy to return to our bed so that the children would not suspect anything strange, but there was no more sex and intimacy. I later mentioned that when I left for work on Thursday, 2 of Gerald's thugs were standing in front of our house, and their van was following me to the office. On Friday evening, Lucy told me that Jessica had returned from Nottingham in the morning. She asked her about her ex-husband, but Jessica closed herself off and tears appeared in her eyes. Carol immediately intervened and literally pushed her out of the room, declaring that Harry was not a topic of conversation in the office. Lucy said that after lunch, Jessica suggested they go for a walk. They sat on a bench in the park. Jessica, having learned that Lucy was going to go with Gerald to Nottingham, advised her not to do this. She said it wasn't worth the pain that was sure to come and that Lucy would end up suffering the most. Jessica added that she sees a lot of her Harry in me, but didn't explain anything else. Lucy relayed these words to me and said that she was now beginning to think about Jessica's advice. I felt relieved, but did not relax. Lucy had to work on Saturday morning, and I was worried that Gerald would get to her there. I knew Jessica was in the office. That was my hope. Lucy went shopping. She came with meat and buns for the barbecue and showed me the new dress she bought for the party. I wondered who paid for it. When she returned, her mood had changed. I asked her directly, "Have you decided not to do this? This is just one time. It will be useful for us. We're not like Jessica and Harry. So you will do it after all. I love you, but this is what I have to do for the sake of our future. This will only happen once. You won't divorce me. You have too much to lose, and I will truly make it up to you." Well, that's it. I'm sure Gerald pestered her while she was at work. This was my biggest fear. She had enough warnings and opportunities to stop, but it was her decision. On Saturday night, after the children had gone to bed, she came up to me again, dressed in her best lingerie, the same one that I bought for her, not Gerald. Again, I refused. I told her what she had to do to get me back into bed with her. She was just trying to get me back into bed so she could start making amends, but she couldn't do that unless I gave her a chance. On Sunday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, guests began to arrive. Our family arrived first. Our parents walked around the house, helping with the preparations. My father took up barbecuing, real barbecue, with coals. Lucy's father busied himself with the drinks, as expected of a Marine. I set up the electronics for music and moved our big TV outside. I started a slideshow of photos of my life, from infancy to our last vacation. Among them was a photo with a treehouse in the background that we took recently. As soon as my parents arrived, Lucy pulled me aside. "Sorry, honey, Jessica just texted me. Gerald is with her. He somehow asked for it himself. I don't know how he found out about the party, because when I invited them, he wasn't there. He was in Leeds. I asked them not to tell him because you didn't want him here after what he did at the last party. They agreed not to talk. And then I realized how he collected all the information. He actually had a bug in his office. And girls, when they chat, can let slip about anything, even things that they would never tell their boss. By 2 o'clock, everyone I wanted to see was already there. Family, our close friends, a couple of my colleagues, Brian, Carol, Frank, Zoe. Even John and Karen, I was surprised that they came. Jessica and Gerald were there too. Gerald didn't have his guards. He probably felt safe in the large crowd. Children were running everywhere, but not Jessica's children. Apparently, Harry stayed with them. My father had the coals heated to the right temperature and wanted to start cooking, so I asked him to wait a couple of minutes. I found Lucy. She was talking with her colleagues. Gerald was among them. I saw her walk in circles until she ended up with them. I joined their company, and the conversation was immediately interrupted. Looking at Lucy, I said, "This is your last chance to stop what is about to happen. Just tell Gerald no." Her colleagues heard my words. I noticed Gerald chuckle. Lucy pulled me aside. "What do you mean?" "Tell Gerald that you won't sleep with him, and the nightmare that is about to begin, including your divorce, will not happen." She straightened up, looked me in the eyes, and said, "This is just one time. It will be good for us. You will lose everything. I need to do this, and I want it." These last words killed my love for her. "You had enough warnings. Now it's on your conscience. You have until I get to the other end of the garden to stop this. Last chance." I looked at the table. Gerald smiled. I looked at him and shook my head slightly. I didn't smile. His grin grew even wider. Jessica looked worried. Brian and Frank were smiling. The others were puzzled. When I approached the table with gifts, I said loudly, "Lucy's family, friends, and colleagues, with the exception of Gerald, her boss. He wasn't invited. The rest are welcome." These words caused excitement. My mother sensed the tension and gathered all the children in the far corner of the garden, which was helpful. "I would like to thank you for these gifts. I see it's mostly beer, wine, and a wonderful bottle of gin with sage and apple. Thanks for this, Dad. That's a good thing, because I think I'm going to need a lot of booze to get through my divorce from Lucy and the custody battle. I wish I had a camera." Oh yes, I had it. Everything was recorded in case Gerald had his guards, and they would start a fight. Silence reigned in the garden. You could hear a leaf falling from a tree. Lucy told me this week that she was going to sleep with Gerald while they were on course next week. I pointed to him, and he stood out from the rest because all his employees had moved away from him. Brian and Frank seemed to know what I was up to. I continued, picking up the TV remote. As if that wasn't enough, she threatened me that I would lose my children, my house, my savings, and even my job. She said she would leave me beggar. Moreover, she said that she would beat herself and report it to the police so that I would never see my children again. Lucy found her voice. "No, I didn't say that," she shouted through her tears. I pressed play, and an edited recording of her saying exactly what she had just denied appeared on the screen. The video stopped just before it became clear that it was Gerald's idea. Lucy screamed, "I didn't mean it. It was just a threat to get you to let me go with Gerald." Looking around, she screamed, "Gerald made me do it to convince you. I wouldn't do that, really." She fell to her knees, sobbing. I looked down at her. "I heard these words from your lips, not from Gerald's lips." Raising my voice to cover the growing noise of voices, I said, "Understand, Gerald loves to humiliate husbands who are happily married. He gets pleasure from it. He destroys lives and marriages, and he's proud of it." I pointed the remote control at the TV. "Look at him grinning, threatening me, with two big guards behind him. He's also a coward." I played a recording of his visit. When it ended, I continued, "He records intimate encounters and then uses these recordings to blackmail their husbands. If they become outraged, he will send the video to everyone they know and ruin their lives. He doesn't sleep with women again. They are just weapons for him to humiliate their husbands. They mean nothing to him." Gerald rushed to the back gate. Unfortunately for him, John stood in front of them with his fists raised. At that moment, Jock caught up with him. He moved fast for such a big guy. He grabbed Gerald by the collar and growled at John, who opened the gate and let Gerald out. Did I mention that Lucy's father has a fiery temper? It seems so. Lucy lay on the ground crying, Maureen by her side. I approached them and said, "Maureen, her things are at the front door. Better take her home." People stood at a distance, divided into awkward groups, not knowing what to do. I'll have to apologize to them later for using them in my showdown. Jock came up to me. "He won't bother you anymore." He raised his hand. "No, I didn't hit him. I just told him to stay away from my family if he knows what's good for him." The physical impact will come later when we cannot be caught. Oh yeah, he stinks. Looks like he shit himself from fear. He looked at Lucy and Maureen. We'll take her home and see you tomorrow. Most people have already left. Only Lucy's colleagues remained. They came up to me. Their facial expressions varied. The men smiled. Most of the women looked puzzled. The strangest thing was that Jessica was smiling. She said something completely unexpected. Thank you. You did what we couldn't. We will support you. Jessica walked away and started doing something with her phone. Now I was confused. I thought she and Gerald were a couple. Frank went to the barbecue and said, "There's a lot of meat here, and we still need to eat." John walked over to the drinks table and brought us all a bottle of beer. He looked at Karen and told her, "You can take it yourself." She looked like she was about to cry. Then she walked over to the table and brought out 4 glasses and a bottle of wine. Jessica is back with us. She looked at John. "Stop it. We discussed this." "Sorry. Not for me, Karen." He looked at his wife. "Sorry, honey. I lost my temper a little, not letting this shit out of the gate." I thought this was probably the first time he had stood up for Gerald. Brian collected some tables and chairs and said to me, "Sit down, buddy. You did a great job for us. Because now he can't blackmail you and therefore us. I'm sure you have it all written down somewhere and we could destroy his business." He looked around those present. "We only started talking about this with each other about a year ago. Carol and I went to a family psychologist. Frank and Zoe did the same. Everything was revealed after we attended one of Gerald's events. We talked. He has some information on the girls, and he blackmailed them. We won't say what that data was, but it was a lie. We just couldn't prove it. One of the parts of this whole game was that they had to tell us right before they went that they were going to sleep with him, and what consequences awaited us if we tried to stop them or divorce them. We had children to look after and no time to think, let alone find a way to stop it. We discussed it, and we think that because you humiliated him, he wanted to get back at him, and he decided to do it through Lucy. He must have been preparing it for weeks using his usual methods, but he gave her an ultimatum on Monday while Jessica was in Nottingham. He probably promised her the same thing he promised the other girls. He said it would just be one time, it would be good for her. He would make her the assistant manager of his new real estate agency because you work so well as a family, and as a family you are an example for his business. He may have even promised her a cash bonus. He wouldn't talk bad about you, he would praise both you and her. And then he would get what he used to blackmail her. She didn't stand a chance. We watched him at work. This is how he sells his luxury real estate. Frank spoke from the barbecue. "I was trying to leave home the night this happened to me. I already called my sister to come and look after the children. I was seething with rage. But outside my house, on the sidewalk, one of Gerald's men was waiting for me. He just looked at me, smiled, and flexed his fingers, shaking his head. It was a clear threat. I went upstairs and looked out the window into the courtyard. There was another person there. I looked at my kids and decided it wasn't worth it. When I threatened Zoe with divorce, Jessica came to me and gave us the contact of a family psychologist. We somehow worked it out, as did Brian and Carol. Oh yes, a couple of days after I visited the lawyer, I was beaten in weight. They didn't take anything, not my wallet, not my phone, not my car keys. He didn't say anything about John and Karen. I think it was a completely different story. There was a knock on the back gate. I wanted to ask Brian to open it, but Jessica ran to the gate without even asking me and opened it. 2 little girls shouted, "Mom, Mom," and hung on her legs. I looked at the man who brought them. I hadn't seen him before, but I had a suspicion. I looked at his hands. They looked strange, but he had a wedding ring on his finger. I guessed that this was Jessica's ex-husband. Jessica took the man's hand and led him towards us. "David, this is Harry," she introduced him. He extended his right hand. I shook it a little reluctantly. He simply smiled at me and said in a very pleasant voice, "It's okay, now it doesn't hurt anymore, only when it's cold." Jessica introduced him to the others. When she got to Brian and Frank, she asked, You guessed it, didn't you? In a way, but we weren't sure. Nice to meet you, Brian said. We all sat down and Jessica told us the whole story. She felt so guilty about what happened to Harry that she gave him all the money she received. She took care of the insurance while he was in the hospital recovering from his injuries. She also tidied up his workshop, repairing equipment that could be repaired and replacing what could not be repaired. A couple of months later, she again went to court to cancel child support and review the children's visitation rights. She even used Gerald's company to pay for lawyers. It was risky, but effective. Gerald didn't know about this. She also gave Gerald's contact book to Harry so he could look for clients for his business. They began visiting a family psychologist, although they were no longer officially married. It took time, but when Harry saw what Jessica did for him, it helped their reconciliation. They got married a little over a year ago, but could not advertise it. I had a question, but Jessica anticipated it. No, I didn't sleep with Gerald after that one time because when Harry was no longer there to humiliate him, he lost interest. She decided to stay in Gerald's company to try to prevent similar incidents in the future and help those who had already suffered, while simultaneously trying to collect dirt on him. However, she failed. Jessica offered me contact information for a good lawyer if I decided to get a divorce. She advised us to think about the consequences because this would affect not only me, but also the children as well as our parents. We continued talking. Jessica and Harry held each other. I said that I suspected that the office had been bugged. Zoe agreed. It's the only way Gerald could know so much about each of us, including tonight's party. Occasionally, details came up in conversations that could be useful to Gerald. That's probably how he found out that I love Broadside and work from home on Wednesdays, I added. I turned to Jessica. Sometimes you look at him and smile as if you like him. No, she answered. I'm just imagining what he'll look like after Harry's done with him. John and Karen left. He was still rude to her. When they reached the gate, Brian and Frank followed. 3 men stood in a circle and talked about something. I didn't hear what exactly, but I felt that John was being reprimanded. When they left, I asked about them. It turned out that John had a questionable past, which others thought Gerald had unearthed. However, no one knew the details. John was a bit submissive by nature, and Gerald constantly took advantage of this by humiliating him. Yes, Gerald and Karen continued to sleep with each other regularly, but only when John was around, such as at parties. Gerald would take her away, do his thing, and bring her back. Sometimes he took her away, but did nothing, as if to say, I could have done it, but I didn't. This was another form of humiliation. Sex was not important to Gerald, it was just a means of control. Karen obviously didn't like it, but that didn't matter to Gerald. Brian and Frank believed that John and Karen had financial problems, possibly gambling or bad investments, but they didn't know for sure. The children began to act up, and it was time for them to go home. Everyone helped me clean up the garden. They put drinks in the refrigerator, put meat in the freezer. Jessica asked me, "Are you going to be okay alone today?" The children went with their mother. I said I would, although it was a lie. When everyone left, I drank myself into unconsciousness. But before that, I made a decision. The next day at noon, Jock, Maureen, Lucy, and the children returned. The tension could be cut with a knife. Lucy tried to approach me, muttering, Sorry. I raised my hand. "Don't come near me." Jock looked at me and suggested we go for a walk, while Lucy got the kids back into the house. They were happy. They didn't understand what was happening. They were simply happy to return home. Jock asked me not to do anything too rash and to think carefully. He said Lucy admitted her guilt. He saw that I was upset and suggested that I consider visiting a marriage counselor. I replied that I would think about it. But at the bottom of the garden, I stopped, turned to him, and said, Jock, my wife, the person I love more than anything in the world, the mother of my children, told me she wanted to sleep with another man. She wanted this, and she was going to do it no matter what. Her lover threatened me with physical violence. She threatened to take away my house, my children, and put me in prison. I would lose my job. I would always be considered a rapist husband. You wouldn't talk to me anymore, and I think my parents would move away too. I would lose everything that is dear to me. Such words are not spoken to the person you love. I'll think about it, but I advise you not to have high hopes. It seems that he then realized that my marriage with his daughter had come to an end. I filed for divorce and child custody. Things weren't going my way until my lawyer showed the judge a video of Lucy threatening me, including the part where she says Gerald forced her to say those words. He also showed Gerald's own threats, which, although veiled, clearly carried dangerous overtones, and pointed out that this man, her boss, could not be a good example for children. The judge agreed. I was awarded custody of the children, and Lucy received supervised visitation rights. Gerald soon moved to Nottingham to start a new business there. Lucy went with him. He was glad to see her. I saw her every other weekend when she would visit her parents and spend the weekend with the kids. A few months later, Gerald's warehouse burned down. It was initially thought to be an electrical failure, but upon investigation, police and firefighters determined that it was arson. Gerald lost a lot of expensive antique and reproduction furniture. There was also something strange with the plumbing that caused the sprinklers to not work. This seemed suspicious and ironic to me. John worked for a local water supply company. It later turned out that it was an insurance scam. The furniture turned out to be not at all what it was said to be. After visits to the insurance company's warehouse in Nottingham and office in Reading, I lost interest. I still met up with Brian, Frank, and sometimes John in a seedy pub. He and Karen worked on their marriage. I wished them all the best. It was there that I learned about Gerald's fire and accident, which occurred while he was out on bail awaiting trial on multiple charges. John gladly listed them to me, but I didn't pay attention. I wasn't interested. I mentioned to Jock that Gerald was in hospital after an accident. He smiled and said, "I know. Saw it in the papers when I was there for the Notts County match." Jock didn't like football. He preferred rugby. The police came to me to ask where I was at the time of the attack on Gerald. I was with Brian and Frank in a pub that had CCTV. Lucky. Jessica took pity on Lucy and transferred her back to the Reading office. This allowed her to see her children more often while working here. We must give her credit. For the sake of the children, I got the restrictions on her visits lifted as soon as possible. One day, when she was picking up the children, I asked her how she had enjoyed her time with Gerald in Nottingham. She looked at me and said, "He didn't want me. There was no one there to humiliate. In fact, I wouldn't let him come within a mile of me. I went there to try to find something on him and try to get you back. Please, can we start over? I love you. I'm sorry." "Did you find something?" I asked. "Not that it would change anything." "Not really," she whispered. I held my voice, remaining calm. "All you had to do was say no to Gerald. I gave you enough chances, and we could have worked things out. But you didn't. You said that want sleep with him, so not the slightest chance." She shouted at me. "He made me say that I wanted to sleep with him to humiliate you even more. I didn't want this. Then, like I said, you should have just said no, but you didn't. And then you threatened me with the loss of my children, my job, my home, and prison. This doesn't feel like love. So go away, and don't be late in bringing the kids back, or you won't see them next week." I looked at her and added, "How ironic that you lost your husband, your children, your home, the respect of your family and friends, almost everything you threatened me with." With these words, I turned around and left without looking back. Lucy moved into a new office in Nottingham with Gerald, but this did not last long. The fire was proven to be arson. Gerald was suspected. It also turned out that the furniture was not original or the reproduction for which it was passed off. Investigators became suspicious when they discovered that some of the wood and foam in the remains did not match the stated materials. I didn't quite understand the details. Gerald was convicted of fraud and arson. His accomplices also received their sentences as accomplices. Jess said the sprinklers in the warehouse didn't work. I still met up with Harry, Brian, Frank, and sometimes John in the same seedy pub. I even began to appreciate local beer. One evening, Harry gave me an invitation to an evening dedicated to the distribution of commissions. It was the first such evening since Gerald was imprisoned. The business continued to use this practice because it seemed fair. I wasn't planning on going, but Harry said it would be good for my kids to see their friends from the office again. I thought the kids were doing great anyway, but I decided it couldn't hurt. Harry mentioned that Broadside would be there. I took the children with me. As I expected, Lucy was there. It seemed to me that Jess was trying to make peace between us. This wasn't supposed to happen, and I'll have to gently explain to her later to stop trying. In the evening, as usual, different groups of people gathered. Employees of the administrative department, cleaners and sellers. The sellers' wives gathered in a separate company. I sat with Brian, Frank, Harry, and John. Since we were away from the others, I quietly asked if they had anything to do with the Nottingham fire. I remembered that John worked for the water company and would know how to turn off the water. They all smiled, and Frank, using an American phrase, said, "We'll use the Fifth Amendment." I was told that they were fishing in Cornwall in those days. Harry has a family living there. He noticed that the more people point to the same alibi, the more reliable it is. Brian added, "You said something like that on our first night at the pub, that the more ideas, the better, and now it's like it's working against you." The four of them smiled like Cheshire cats. Jess came up to my shoulder, leaned over, and whispered, "Without your help, Lucy, this would not have happened. Only the people at this table know what really happened." She straightened up and left. I looked at Lucy playing with the children. I felt a pang in my heart, but immediately pushed the feeling away. As I was leaving with the kids, I asked Jess if we could talk privately later. She smiled, put her hand on my shoulder, and said, "I was waiting for you to ask. You can come to the office after work on Tuesday. Lucy won't be there, but the others will be. Will it fit? I'll need to get the kids settled." "Bring them with you. The other kids miss them." I realized that she was trying to create an atmosphere of family unity, but it would not work. I was going to tell her to stop trying to set Lucy and I up. I came to the office on Tuesday. The children immediately ran to their friends. There were shouts of joy, although they had seen each other only 3 days ago. Jess pointed to her office. I wanted to immediately express everything I was thinking as I passed by, so I said rather sharply, "Still dressing sexy and businesslike, I see," nodding at Zoe and Carol. "Yes, we have to maintain an image. We are known for this style, and we must preserve it. But no stockings, only if someone wants it. And as for underwear, I have no idea, it doesn't matter anymore. Now that Gerald is gone, we are thinking about introducing a uniform. It will still be stylish, but less provocative, more like an airline stewardess uniform." Well, I lost this little verbal battle. Before I could respond, Karen entered the office with a tray of tea. She smiled at me. She looked happier than I had seen her in a long time. "Does she seem happy?" I asked when Karen left. "Yes. She and John are working on their problems, going to a marriage counselor. This seems to help. We've found a few things that help them." She looked at me. "I think you came here to ask me to stop trying to get you and Lucy back together. I will stop if you listen to me and read this folder with an open mind." With these words, she took a folder out of the drawer and put it on the table, keeping her hand on it. "I think you still love Lucy. I see the way you look at her, but you can't believe or trust her. David, this is difficult for me, but there are things in this folder that will be difficult to accept." She tapped the folder with her finger. "While cleaning up after a fire in Nottingham, builders found a fireproof box. It was returned to us. We opened it, and inside were dossiers on each of us. These files, including those who previously worked for Gerald, described his thoughts about each person. In them, he described in detail our weaknesses, strengths, how he could create an advantage for himself, where to retreat in order to win the argument and control us. Remember how you said that Gerald seemed to know everything about your favorite beer? Well, he really knew. He had a bug. You probably realized this later when you forbade him from inviting him to your party. Now that bug is gone. She took a sip of tea. Everyone got their files. Harry and I burned ours in his workshop. I just opened the first page of your file to make sure it was signed correctly. Gerald may have deliberately mixed them up to confuse them if they were found. The first page is always a chronology of events. She sipped her tea again and continued. For all of us, Gerald followed a clear plan, no changes. But in your case, dates moved and events changed. I wanted to ask a question, but she raised her hand so that I could listen to her. Please read this and think about Lucy. Yes, she was wrong, but so were Karen, Carol, Zoe, and me. We thought we were doing the right thing. We haven't seen Gerald's real performance. Have you read my file? I asked. No, I only looked at the first page. The rest is yours. She moved the folder towards me, but still kept her hand on it. There is a memory card there. Don't lose her. I assume that it contains similar information to what I have. I felt like Jess wasn't done yet, but I had a question. Why are you giving this to me and not Lucy? She knows about the folder. When I showed it to her, I told her what was in my file. Lucy asked me to give the folder to you. She didn't open it and doesn't know what's inside. She sighed and added quietly, There's something else I have to tell you, but you have to promise not to tell anyone about it. This could destroy a lot of families. I trust you, but I need your honesty. I was intrigued, but I already had an inkling that it had something to do with her remarks on Sunday. Yes, I promise to keep it a secret, I said seriously. Jess took her hand off the folder, and I took it. Looking at her, I asked, If I didn't promise, would you still give me the folder? Yes, but what I'm about to say is even more important than this folder. She took a deep breath. Lucy played a key role in Gerald's destruction. This cannot be written down. Only Brian, Frank, Harry, John, Lucy, and I know the full story. Carol, Zoe, Karen, and Harry's brother in Cornwall, Jack, know something has happened but don't know the details. The girls will probably guess the point. That long fishing weekend? I asked. Yes. Jess told me that Lucy specifically went to Nottingham with the intention of revenge. She suspected that something was wrong there. In short, Lucy found out that expensive furniture had been replaced with cheap ones. She was insured for £1.6 million. The insurance company insisted on upgrading the fire system, alarm system, and security cameras. But the wiring was terrible. Lucy told us about it, and we suspected that Gerald was planning an insurance scam by starting a fire and blaming it on electrical wiring. We decided to bypass him and set him up. Jess continued. The boys went to Cornwall, borrowed a van from Harry's brother, and headed to Nottingham. I don't know all the details. You have to talk to them yourself. All I know is that gasoline and a crude device with Gerald's fingerprints were used. The sprinkler system did not work, and the fingerprints of one of his men were found on the building's water control valve. During the investigation, it turned out that Gerald had financial problems. He had the means, the motive, and the opportunity. The jury found him guilty. He admitted that he planned the insurance fraud, but always denied that the arson was his doing. He was convicted on the main and several additional charges. It was a big deal in Nottingham, but it barely reached us. Jess sighed. Without Lucy's help, we would not have been able to take revenge. She organized everything there. Please take this into account. She tried to make things right. She looked down and added quietly, You are the only man she loved and was intimate with. I had a lot to think about. My tea is cold, and Jake had already begun to complain that he was hungry. He was always hungry. It's time to go home. We left Jess's office. The girls had already left, and Harry was looking after my children. He shook my hand and, noticing the folder, said, When you're done with this, I have a cremator in the workshop. You can use it. Jess and Harry walked us to the front of the store. If you need help while you're reading, give us a call. We're here for you. We all know this pain. Please give Lucy a chance, mate. I know this will be hard work for you. But if you decide to refuse, we will never mention it again. You will still be desired." She gave me a small smile and kissed my cheek. "You were hurt by that bastard Gerald, so you're part of our family." I decided that I'll have burgers for dinner tonight. On the way home, I decide not to read the folder until Saturday, when Lucy is with the children. I wasn't that strong. Curiosity took over. I fed the children, washed them, and put them to bed. I got myself a Green King IPA, settled down on the couch, and opened the folder. Attached to the top of the folder was a plastic bag containing an SD card. The first piece of paper was a calendar, and the boxes contained notes. One for the day Lucy started next week was marked "Clothing Budget 400. This was how much Lucy would spend when we went shopping with her for her work outfits. A week later, tights, a week later, underwear, and a week later, husband support. There were check marks next to these marks. There were two kinds of entries, one in red, which looked like the target date, and one in black, which was probably the completion date. There were a lot of filled boxes with words like featured and a code. I'm guessing it had to do with real estate. There were also names, one of which appeared frequently Darren. He always seemed to go to the same property. I imagine it takes a long time to decide to spend 7 or 8 million pounds. There was a date for the commission distribution party, and after that there was a lot of red crossing out and lines connecting the dates. One of the bundled boxes was called Darren. Looking at the specific dates on Monday, when Lucy told me about the course, it said, "L tells Darren about the course." Tuesday, L confronts Darren about sex. Wednesday, G confronts Darren with RT. They all had completion dates. On Wednesday, Gerald came to see me. I assumed that R and T were his henchmen. I sat and looked at it for a while, then I saw it. He rescheduled all his plans after the commission distribution party. But who is Darren? As I returned from the kitchen with another beer, it occurred to me that Gerald made Lucy tell me early that he was going to sleep with her. Unlike what Jess, Carol, Karen, and Zoe did with their husbands, they walked out the door, giving them very little chance to stop it. Frank and Brian assumed that this was what Gerald did to humiliate me. I opened the folder again and turned the calendar over. The sheet underneath contained lists. I learned the names, phone numbers, email addresses, birthdays of friends and family, even my boss at work, and the word broadside. It's a shame I don't have it now, but small beers were the order of the day, and only 2 a day. It was too much to take in, and then there was the SD card. I had to deal with the kids in the morning, so I closed the file and went to bed. I didn't sleep. The next day, I couldn't concentrate at work. I needed to sort this out, so I called Jock and Maureen and asked them to pick the kids up from school and take them over for the evening. I received a message back that they would keep them overnight. They will come for overnight supplies along the way and pick up the children from school. Alone, I coughed and opened the folder to the second page. It was a list of all our friends, family, work colleagues, with names, email addresses, some phone numbers and house addresses, basically everyone we knew. There were banks, building societies, clubs. There was information there that I didn't know about. On the next page were lists of likes and dislikes. Lists of what some people called strengths and weaknesses were all pretty revealing to see how someone thought about you and your wife. What I noticed was that there was no mention of the children other than their names and birthdays. Gerald probably realized that this would be going too far. I received a text from Jess asking if everything was okay. I simply replied, "I'm managing for now." Next was the SD card. I was afraid of this moment. I got broadside for this. I inserted the card into my laptop and opened it. There were a lot of video files, some quite large, some very small. I sorted them by date and started with the newest ones. It was quite a large file. It opened to reveal Lucy sitting in Gerald's office. I could see from the date stamp that it was the Saturday before my birthday party. Lucy began, "Gerald, I can't do this. He'll ruin David. I'll quit. I don't care what you do." "I'm really sorry to hear that, Lucy. I'm looking forward to a couple of nights with you." "Well, it's okay. You will have many nights with David, next to his bed. At least you have two sets of grandparents to look after while you visit David in the hospital. I saw him slide a piece of paper across the table towards her. And I still have that video. You'll have a hard time telling it's fake, but when people see it, they won't look too hard. They'll just assume all your bonuses came from being on your back. You might convince David, but I'm not sure about your friends, his friends, and everyone else on that list. With that, the door opened and his two henchmen entered. You wouldn't, said Lucy. We would talk to Jessica and ask how her ex-husband Harry is doing. He had several incidents. Looks like he's still not working. He's not seeing his kids, and as you can see, Russell and Thomas are still here. So show some courage. Be a big girl and do it. I already told you this will only happen once, I promise. Again, asked Jessica. Lucy was halfway to the door when he spoke. Oh, Lucy, and if you tell him and he comes for me, my two staff will deal with him, and the video will be circulated. So no violent actions on the part of the husband, eh? One of the henchmen held the door open for her, while the other stood there clicking his fists, both smiling. Lucy ran away crying. I was starting to feel like crap. I should have supported her. But after thinking about it, I couldn't. She didn't tell me she was being blackmailed. I gave her enough chances. She gave in to his threats, not trusting me. But at least now I understand why she did what she did. I decided to open the next file. It was dated before the one I just looked at. Gerald asked, how did David react? What the hell do you think? Lucy sounded angry. I told him I was going to sleep with you for 2 nights, and he couldn't do anything about it. I threatened to take away everything he loved. How the hell do you think he reacted? Gerald just leaned back in his chair. I saw him smile at her. He will survive this, everyone does, well, most. If not, he will soon learn from his mistake. Russ and Tom will take care of it. What do you think of the progressive agreement? This is my new idea. He just threw it away. He didn't even look. Well, it's useless anyway. I won't try this again. Okay, here's what you tell him. He then began instructing Lucy on what to say, what tone of voice to use, and even when to end and leave. She followed his instructions exactly. He made her practice her tone of voice. Become arrogant, make it seem like it's a foregone conclusion that it will happen no matter what I do or say. He was very convincing. I felt like a big crap again, but again, she should have just come to me. But with the threat of violence from 2 henchmen, I understand why she didn't do it. But if I had known it was coming, me, Brian, Frank, and most likely Jock could have dealt with it. I pulled out another broadside and started watching the clips. There was a big one that definitely made it look like Lucy slept with this Darren guy. There was a piece where they went into the room and another piece where they came out. They were both dressed exactly the same, and in the background was a rumpled bed that was fully made when they entered. There were several clips of her zipping up her tights. There were a lot of small clips. It definitely looked like they were both in the same place, but the originals had timestamps. They were completely different. If you look closely, you can see that the shadows are in different places. It was very well done. That's why Gerald wanted the girls to dress the same for every show. I'll have to find Darren and talk to him. I'll probably take Jock with me. I think he'll like it. At that moment, I received a text from Jessica. Are you okay? I'll fight, I'll cope. I wasn't going to answer, but I did. There's a lot to think about. She replied, I'm really sorry. I never stopped loving you. Maybe you should come. No, it's too early. I love you, good night. I had to think a lot on my own. The big question is, now what? On Thursday, I picked the kids up from school. Everything was back to some semblance of normalcy, or what was normal in our home. I packed the kids' clothes for a weekend with their mother. There wasn't much. She kept the kid at Jock and Maureen's house. She usually picked them up straight from school and then picked up the clothes on the way past my house. I had to face her. We had both made mistakes, and I was still sure that her mistakes were big ones. But I still felt a little crap. The doorbell rang at the usual time. I grabbed my bags and opened the door to see Lucy, Maureen, and Jock standing there. I half expected something like this. Lucy looked good, not sexy good. This was clearly not a bargaining chip to get me to lie with her. Honey, we need to talk. Mom and Dad will pick up the children. They know about the folder, but like me, they don't know what's in it. Although I have a pretty good idea what it is, please, dear, can we talk? I guess now is the right time. I invited her to come in. Moiraine hugged me, as did Jock. He had never done this before. He took the bags with the children's things and left. I made as much coffee as I wanted, too early for beer. Over coffee, I went through everything I found. She saw a list of names and addresses and a video file that implied she had slept with this Darren guy. But she didn't know him as Darren. To her, he was Charles Harrington. Now she knew he was part of the scam. That's all she saw. I pointed out to her that she always dressed the same, as Gerald had said, and showed her that window shadows were often in the wrong place. I showed her all the short clips with timestamps that made up the fake, including the one where she kisses that Darren Charles guy. She was clearly shocked and pushed him away. It was probably a shock, but the kiss lasted a good 5 seconds. She didn't seem to answer him. I ran it a few times, and you could see Darren Charles setting her up. I asked her why she didn't tell me about this. She said it would upset me, and I could do something about it, and it could cost her the deal. Now she knows that it was nonsense. The sale never happened. By the time we finished, it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. I got beer and wine. She probably needed a drink. Me, tired of coffee, and she could call a taxi home or her parents could pick her up. I popped a couple of prick and ping pre-made dinners into the microwave. We ate them straight out of the boxes without doing any washing up. Now the serious conversation will begin. I softened my attitude towards her after what I now knew. I tried to be kind. Honey, I told her, this was the first time I had ever used a term of endearment. There are so many things you could do to relieve the pain. You could say something like, Gerald told me to threaten you with this, or you could give me some hint that you're under pressure, like saying, I made a mistake. Almost anything to let me know that you are under pressure from Gerald. When you left, you could have just turned to me and said, I'm sorry, or just shown remorse, rather than leaving me to sit and watch my world end. As I talked about this, the anger surfaced again. Sorry, honey, I didn't know what else to do. Gerald told me that I should do this, so you will understand how serious it is. I'm so sorry. I was so confused. I saw her problem. You told me you wanted to do this, didn't you? Did you want to sleep with him? She was crying. I wanted to go to her, but I had to stand. I had to get to the end. Well, did you want to? She looked at me and said, I don't know, my love. I really don't know. I think if I convinced myself that I wanted to sleep with Gerald, it would make it easier for me to do it. It sounds pathetic. I don't know if that's a real excuse. And I somehow thought that if it was normal for me, then it would be normal for you too. Sorry, my love, when I say it out loud, it sounds really stupid. She lowered her head. She raised her hand and took my face in her hands. I'm really sorry, darling, but you asked me to, and if I lie to you now, it will be a lie forever, and I've already made enough mistakes. She leaned forward and kissed my lips. Oh, those soft, warm lips that I missed so much. I pushed her back. She just admitted that she wanted to try another man. It hurt. I went to the kitchen. Did she really want to try this, or was she making up excuses for herself? Were her excuses good enough? The question arose. What came first, the desire to sleep with another man, or the desire to finish it? And sex with another man was just a bonus. Damn, I'm out of broadside. You'll have to use Abbott's reserve. I came up with a plan. It was short-term and bad, but that's all I could come up with. Get mad at her, demand an answer, loudly, not giving her time to think. The first answer is usually the most honest. I burst through the living room door and yelled at her. Okay, was the experience of sex with Gerald a priority, or was it just to get it over with? I stared at her. She cringed, tears streaming down her face. She looked at me and without hesitation said, Finish this. I needed to get over this so we could move on with our lives. I don't know. I think I made up that I wanted to sleep with Gerald as an excuse in my mind to make it easier. I really wish we had someone who could see inside my head because I'm as confused as shit right now. Her reaction made me believe her, mostly, but there was always a little doubt left. I didn't give up. I snorted. Well, we sorted out the fact that you slept with him. Now all that remains is to deal with the humiliation that he wanted to inflict on me, and in which you were going to help him. Because it wasn't about him sleeping with you, it was about humiliating me. Make me your henpecked man, which is worse than being a cuckold. I know, darling, I can't make up for this to you. I've had time to think about it. When you said that was his goal, I didn't believe you 100%. He seemed like a nice person to me. Now I know that this is nonsense. I asked the girls in the office. No one said anything bad about him. Now I know why. He had something on them, and the office was bugged. One day, returning from the show where Charles kissed me, I found a note on my desk. It said, "Don't trust him. He's not a good person." I thought it was about Charles, not Gerald. But after that, I began to look more closely at Gerald, and little things began to appear. The way he treated some of the male clients, it was as if he was trying to show his superiority, even if they were larger than him. Then I already began to guess that you were probably right. But then it was too late. I've already fallen into his web. Sorry, darling, you warned me what he was really like. I didn't think that he would get to the husbands of the employees. It seemed stupid. I didn't realize that this was his goal, to have access to people he could humiliate at will. He's a sick bastard. Later in Nottingham, I saw him whispering insults to clients behind their backs after they had left. I didn't hear the words, but it was clear from his attitude. I'm sorry, dear, I was so wrong. Now I had the answers, or rather the best I could get. I saw that Lucy was suffering greatly from the fact that I brought all this up. I sat down next to her on the sofa. I have known this expression on her face for a long time. She was experiencing severe mental pain. I couldn't take it away from her. I love this woman, and she needed my help. I hugged her, and she clung to me, sobbing, whispering, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I don't know how long it took, but eventually she calmed down. It seemed she even fell asleep. Lucy quietly stood up, looked me in the eyes, and said, Thank you, my love. I'm so sorry I put you through all this. Then she kissed me. Lucy pulled away, looked into my eyes, and said, I love you. I have to do this. We made love. Lucy was the first to break the silence. David, can I stay the night? It would be cruel to send her away, so I said, Yes. I need to tell Mom and Dad. I was about to say something, but she leaned over and kissed me. When she pulled away, she said, Don't worry. She stood up, took her purse, and went to the kitchen. It's a little more difficult for a man to get himself in order, but I did it. After some time, she returned with a bottle of beer and a mobile phone in her hands. She showed me the message. Mom, Dad, I'm not coming home today. I'm staying at David's. Do not make a big deal about it. We went to the bedroom and made love tenderly. The beer remained almost full on my nightstand. The morning was a little awkward, but we made it through. We sat down to breakfast with tea and toast with strawberry jam. I was already drinking my second tea when Lucy said, Where do we go next? Last evening, night and morning were pleasant. Oh yeah, we did that this morning too, catching up. She was honest with me last night. Now it's my turn to be honest. I have 2 problems and I will need help. You threatened to take away everything I hold dear without warning. I don't care who put those words into your mouth, but they came out of your mouth. And you said you wanted to sleep with Gerald. Now I understand some of the reasons, but it still hurts me that you said you wanted to sleep with another man. You said it to me. I'll need to talk to someone, but I don't know who yet. It's going to be hard for me to trust you again after you said you wanted to sleep with that idiot. She looked upset and I relented. But we can continue to see each other until I think it over. This might help, but we're not together yet. She jumped up from her seat, rushed towards me, and sat down on my knees. Maybe I should ask Jess and Karen about their consultants. They may know someone suitable. I will go with you if you want. I will do everything, dear. I told her it might be a good idea. I went with Lucy and the children to the sea on Saturday. Lucy and I didn't show each other any affection in front of the children. I didn't want to give them false hope, just like Lucy herself. We took the kids back to Maureen and Jock and put them to bed. Maureen and Jock tactfully disappeared. As I was about to leave, Lucy came up to me and put her arm around my neck. Thank you for today, dear. I know this hasn't been easy for you. I managed to talk a little with Jess and Karen. They both use the same consultant. Hopefully one of them will contact us soon. I can see how hurt you are by what I said. I'm so sorry I hurt you, darling. I didn't want this, but I was confused and still am. We kissed and I went home. I had a lot to think about, and thinking can be dangerous. The next day, after lunch, Harry called me. He asked if he and Jess could come over to my place around 6 and bring dinner with them. I wasn't happy about the prospect of being alone with my thoughts, so I decided that the sooner I talked to someone, the better. They arrived at 6 o'clock sharp with Chinese food. I took myself a beer, Jess took wine, and more than one glass. Harry only drank tonic. Jess drank another glass of wine. David, Harry, and I also had similar problems that almost destroyed us again. We think you and Lucy are in a similar situation right now. It was very difficult in the first days. She took a sip of wine. What did Lucy tell you? I asked. Only that she told you that she wanted to sleep with Gerald. Did she tell you why she wanted it? No, she didn't give me a single reason, not even a hint, Jess answered, looking at the floor. Then she added quietly, I had similar thoughts as Lucy. But I only had one day to think it over. Lucy had over a week. Jess took a long sip of her wine. I understood why Harry wasn't drinking. Jess was holding his hand tightly. Jess admitted to me that in the short period between the time she told Harry and the time it happened, she wondered what it would be like to have sex with Gerald. She said that if she had been asked then, she would have honestly admitted that she wanted this just to get it over with, because, in her opinion, it would only be one time. She squeezed Harry's hand and continued. Lucy had the same thing, but she had a week for this. A week of threats to you and her. Damn it, I wish I could sleep with him too, so this would all stop. To leave this behind. Lucy was under enormous pressure. It was all done to humiliate you, but Lucy didn't understand that. She stopped. Sorry, I should have guessed his plans when he sent me to Nottingham. I didn't think he was ready to attack Lucy. I didn't take into account the additional humiliation he wanted to inflict on you because of what you did at the party. Frank and Brian saw it, but they were afraid to come to me. They didn't want to set me up. They could go to Harry. He nodded. But they didn't know that he and I were together again. It's my fault. I should have seen this coming. She was crying. Jess was a strong woman. She needed to be like this to endure all this and bring Harry back. But now she was sitting on my sofa and crying bitterly. Listen, mate, Harry intervened. Lucy is still tormented by guilt over what she told you. Yes, she could have acted differently, but she was under pressure. She wanted to get it over with and used every stupid trick Gerald had instilled in her. If your videotape is anything like ours, he coached her on what and how to say to cause you maximum humiliation. He didn't even need to see it. It was enough for him to know that this was happening. Jess calmed down and stopped crying. I don't know what happened over the weekend. We assumed you were discussing the folder, but Lucy is much happier now. Please give her a chance. Jess handed me a business card. This is our consultant's contact. We think she'll tell you the same thing we told you, but she'll explain it much better. She's very good. She even helped me overcome my guilt over having fun with Gerald and reassure Harry that it wasn't demeaning to him. What the hell? I looked at Harry. He looked calm. Jess told me she felt guilty. Her mind didn't want it, but her body failed her, he explained. The consultant suggested that this was another ploy by Gerald to humiliate him. Jess continued. We heard him once tell John she resisted this time, but I still gave her a little pleasure. We think he said something similar to Frank and Brian. Lucy and I went to see a consultant who had been recommended by Jess and Harry. She turned out to be very good. For the first 45 minutes, she just listened to us both tell our stories. Then she asked me a question, or two to be exact. The first one was simple. Do you love Lucy? Yes. What is your biggest concern? She said she wanted to have sex with another man while we were married. Why? And can I trust her not to do it again? The consultant turned to Lucy. Lucy, why did you want to try another man? I don't know, she answered. I was confused. I said what I wanted. I had time to think about it, too much time, and I thought I had to do it to save my family and marriage. I think I convinced myself that if I really wanted it, it wouldn't be so bad. The consultant looked at Lucy. I've never looked at it from this point of view before. But I have encountered such situations only a few times, and talking with colleagues, only one of them encountered something similar. She turned to me. David, what do you think of this explanation? I don't know. I've never thought about it that way. What do you think? I'll tell you my opinion, but first I want to hear yours. Don't know. Men usually don't have to worry about being used. I think there is some logic to this. I agree with you. As a woman, I can understand what Lucy meant. She turned to me. We looked back. Are you satisfied with everything now? This will give you food for thought. I nodded. She wasn't trying to force me to make a decision right now, but now I understood where Lucy was coming from. The problem remained the same. Can I trust her? Now let's look to the future and try to deal with David's concerns about the future, the consultant said. She turned to Lucy. Now that you're divorced, you have the freedom to be with whoever you want without consequences. Do you agree? Lucy looked a little confused, but I understood where she was going with this. This was a question I was afraid to ask myself, afraid of the answer. Lucy nodded. Did you take advantage of this opportunity? The answer was without hesitation. No. The only person I've been close to since I was first with David is David. She straightened up and continued. Yes, I had the opportunity, but in my mind, if I did it, it would mean that I gave up and no longer tried to bring David and my family back. And I'm not ready for this. She looked at me. Maybe you would still accept me even if I was with someone else after we broke up, but maybe you wouldn't. I'm not ready to take risks. I love you and only want you next to me, no one else. I knew Lucy for 15 years, and despite everything that happened to Gerald, I believed her. And now I believed. I thought a lot tonight. Harry's words echoed in his head. You'll never know unless you try. But I needed some kind of insurance in case things went wrong again. The next day I called Lucy and agreed to meet at her office. If she doesn't agree to my proposal, she'll have Jess and the others to back her up. I just told her that I wanted to discuss something. When I arrived, she took me into Jess's office and closed the door. I didn't sit down. Without further ado, I said directly, I love you. I will always love you. But I need to reduce the risk of experiencing the pain I experienced again. You can go home. She was about to rush towards me, but I raised my hand to stop her. There are conditions. They are non-negotiable. You are coming home to be a mother to our children. You pay your expenses. We will have separate accounts. You will be a tenant, paying rent that covers the house and food. But the rent includes my bed. I paused. That's the hardest part. I will never marry you again. If you make a mistake, you leave. Lucy rushed to me and hugged me tightly, almost crushing me. Yes, 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 she screamed, tears streaming down her face. When we left Jess's office, she came up to us, hugged me, and, seeing Lucy's smile, she realized how it all ended. She told Lucy to take the weekend and come back to work on Monday. We went to Jock and Maureen's, packed our things, and there were tears again. Later that year, at Christmas, my and Lucy's parents came to visit us. It was already late, so the children were sent to bed. I went upstairs to see if Jake was playing on his new tablet. It took longer than I expected because he was playing. When I came downstairs, I heard Lucy talking to her parents in the kitchen. I'm surprised he took you back, Jock said. Has everything become the same again? No, Dad, everything is not like before. This is the new normal that I can live with. It's a way to be close to him, love him, and share his bed. He will never trust me completely again, and I understand that after what I said. He will never marry me again, and I will always be for him only a tenant in the house, but not in his heart. Dad, if I ruin everything again, he can easily and painlessly break up with me. I seriously screwed up. I should have trusted David and gone to him as soon as Gerald approached me. If I had done that,